History is often written by the survivors, but its darkest truths are kept in the margins of civilization, recorded in the ledgers of shadows we try to forget. Today, we reopen the most harrowing files ever recorded. This is a definitive 15-minute investigation into the lives, the crimes, and the eventual downfall of the most prolific monsters in human history. From medieval woods to modern city streets. From the superstitious panics of the 16th century to the high-tech forensic breakthroughs of the modern era, the archetype of the serial killer has evolved, yet the darkness within remains a chilling constant. Our investigation begins in the late 1500s, in the fractured heart of the Holy Roman Empire, a land gripped by religious war, famine, and a terrifying weight of supernatural dread. In this vacuum of central authority, a charismatic and ruthless leader named Peter Niers found his perfect hunting ground in the lawless spaces between cities, where justice was a fragile concept. Niers was more than a common murderer. He was the head of a sophisticated network of outlaws. He didn't just kill, he managed a roaming gang that turned the countryside into a theater of terror. But his descent into absolute darkness was fueled by black magic. Niers believed he could attain supernatural powers, like invisibility, through the most horrific ritualistic acts ever recorded. He sought the Hand of Glory, a magical item crafted from the severed hand of a hanged man. He believed fetal remains were the key to unlocking its power and protecting him from any law. To fuel these rituals, his most sickening obsession targeted pregnant women. He confessed to killing 24 of them, cut fetuses from their wombs, and used their remains in his alchemical works. Captured first in 1577, he confessed to 75 murders before miraculously escaping back into the forests to continue his spree for 4 more years. Justice seemed unable to hold him. His end finally came in 1581. At a bathhouse in Neumarkt, he was recognized by a fellow bather who grew suspicious of his guarded bag. When he refused to part with it, the citizens alerted the authorities. A search of that bag revealed the horrifying truth: the severed hands and hearts of infants. The bandit king was finally unmasked, his magical protection failing in the light of day. His execution was a 3-day masterpiece of medieval cruelty. On the first day, he was flayed with red-hot pincers, and hot oil was poured into the wounds. On the second day, his feet were greased and roasted over glowing coals, a public ritual of purification and punishment that drew thousands of spectators. Finally, on the third day, he was broken on the wheel with 42 strikes before being quartered while still alive, ending one of history's bloodiest reigns. Just years later, another shadow fell over Germany. Peter Stumpp, a wealthy farmer, became the subject of the most famous werewolf trial in human history. Under extreme torture, Stumpp confessed to a pact with the devil at age 12, receiving a magical belt that allegedly allowed him to transform into an insatiable wolf. For 25 years, he allegedly preyed on his neighbors, confessing to the murder of 14 children and 2 pregnant women. Bedburg lived in absolute fear. In a detail that stunned the world, Stumpp admitted to murdering his own son and devouring his brain in a fit of monstrous, supernatural hunger. The evidence was literal. Hunters claimed they saw a wolf transform back into Stumpp, who was missing the same hand the wolf had lost in a trap. To the court, it was definitive proof. However, modern historians believe Stumpp may have been a victim of religious persecution, a Protestant convert used as a warning during the chaos of the Cologne War. Regardless of the truth, his execution on Halloween 1589 was a display designed to terrify. Flayed, broken, and beheaded, his head was placed on a pike atop a wheel. 3 centuries later, the terror moved from the dark forest to the gas-lit streets of the city. Jack the Ripper was born, the first modern media monster. Victorian London's Whitechapel was a district of desperate poverty and anonymity, the perfect habitat for a ghost who left no footprints but much blood. While dozens were murdered, 5 women became etched into history as the canonical 5. Their lives, cut short with surgical precision, changed criminal investigation forever. The killer operated with a precision that baffled investigators. The surgical-grade mutilations and organ removals led many to believe the Ripper was a trained doctor. Internal organs were removed with anatomical accuracy, sometimes in near-total darkness, suggesting a hunter with deep medical expertise and a cold, calculating mind. The killer was a master of media. The name Jack the Ripper was self-styled in letters sent to the press, turning a local horror into a global obsession. The most chilling contact was the From Hell letter, containing half of a human kidney purportedly from victim Catherine Eddowes. The sender claimed to have eaten the rest. Victorian police were overwhelmed. Despite bloodhounds and thousands of interviews, forensic science was too primitive to catch a ghost that vanished at will. After 5 victims, the murders stopped as abruptly as they began. The Ripper faded back into the fog, leaving behind the ultimate enigma of criminal history. In 1920s America, a monster hidden behind a grandfatherly facade emerged. Albert Fish, whose depravity knew no bounds and whose mind was a landscape of absolute darkness. Fish emerged from a childhood of extreme trauma. Abandoned in an orphanage and subjected to regular abuse, he learned to associate pain with a twisted form of religious ecstasy. Fish was a severe masochist who found pleasure in his own suffering. X-rays later revealed over 100 needles he had inserted into his own pelvic region. Blending religious mania with a thirst for blood, Fish believed he was carrying out divine commands through his victims, viewing his acts of cannibalism as rituals. His most famous crime, the 1928 abduction of 10-year-old Grace Budd, was only solved years later. He lured her away by promising a birthday party, a lie that led to unspeakable cruelty. His downfall was his own narcissism. Fish suffered from a mania for writing, sending graphic, detailed letters to his victims' families years after the crimes. In 1934, a letter to Grace's mother gave police the final clue. Tracing the stationery and his handwriting, the Gray Man was finally unmasked and brought to justice. Psychiatrists labeled him a psychiatric marvel of evil. He was executed in the Sing Sing electric chair in 1936, ending one of the darkest lives in American history. In the Soviet Union, Andrei Chikatilo thrived on the ideological blind spots of a state that refused to believe serial killers could exist in its socialist paradise. Official Soviet policy maintained serial murder was a product of capitalism. This denial allowed Chikatilo to kill 52 people over 12 years without being linked. Born into the horrors of famine and World War II, Chikatilo's childhood was a record of starvation and intense trauma that fractured his psyche beyond repair. He found his only sense of power at the edge of the woods, luring victims from bus and train stations into isolated forest strips for acts of extreme violence. He was caught in 1984 but released because his blood type didn't match the evidence at the scene, a rare biological fluke called being a non sequitur. It took the world's first successful criminal profile by Dr. Buchanovsky to finally crack Chikatilo's silence and secure a confession for 56 murders. During his trial, he was kept in a metal cage to protect him from the rage of the victims' families. In 1994, he was executed with a single gunshot. Finally, we reach the modern era with Luis Alfredo Garavito, the most prolific serial killer in modern history, known across South America as La Bestia. Preying on over 190 young boys across 3 countries, Garavito exploited the displacement of low-income families and children. He was a master of disguise, posing as a monk, a charity worker, or a traveling salesman to lure children away from crowded markets and into the wilderness. His reign of terror ended in 1999. The scale of his crimes and the meticulous details in his notebooks revealed a level of predation that horrified the world. His arrest sparked national outrage when it was revealed that despite a massive sentence, Colombian law capped his prison time at just 40 years. This loophole forced a complete overhaul of the legal system, leading to the Garavito Law, which increased sentences for crimes against children across South America. Garavito spent his remaining years in a high-security cell, his health slowly failing as the gravity of his crimes continued to haunt the nation he devastated. The Beast died of leukemia in prison on October 12, 2023. He never saw the outside world again, closing one of the bloodiest chapters in modern criminal history. From medieval superstition to modern bureaucratic failures, these monsters thrived in the shadows of our society's blind spots. Their stories remain as warnings. By remembering their stories, we bring light to the shadows, ensuring that these monsters remain where they belong, in the past. Thank you for watching.